What's up, guys? Jordan from BRX here. I'm going to go over a little bit of in-season stuff, how we kind of build out a plan, how you can apply some factors like goals, your role on the team, your schedule, to build yourself an in-season plan to basically achieve what you want to achieve with your baseball career. What's up, guys? So a couple weeks ago, we made a post talking about why in-season training is important. We didn't really go into a lot of how to, the actual X's and O's of how to execute in-season training plans. So today we're going to kind of go through that. For me, when I'm writing an in-season program, there's some principles we want to take care of, but there's also generally going to be kind of 4 levels of consideration that I'm going to put into what the schedule is going to look like, what we're going to do, how we might move stuff around, things like that. And they're all kind of intertwined. No one is more important than the other. You kind of got to factor them all in. So I'm going to go through those today. So the 4 steps: 1, what are your goals? 2, what is your role? 3, what's your schedule look like? 4, the actual just baseball specific considerations that go into a program. Okay, so starting with what are your goals? Okay, because there's a spectrum of this. Some guys just want to have fun in high school. They don't have plans of playing after high school. They just want to enjoy their time, compete, and be as successful as possible doing that. Then there's obviously the opposite end of that spectrum, right? The guys who want to play professionally or play at the highest level, strive to achieve as high of baseball ability, baseball skill level as they possibly can, right? There's not a wrong answer in there, but where you fall on that spectrum and being honest about that is kind of the first step, right? Because if it's a guy who, if you're that first option where you just want to be a successful high school player, like in-season training, you're lining stuff up with your goals. You don't have to be as diligent about making sacrifice and getting training in. Obviously, you want to keep training to be successful and stay healthy, but it's really not going to be as detrimental to you to not be like super dialed in on your plan, right? Just being honest here. So guys like that, honest, they should just train a couple times a week, feel good. Like if you want to go bro out with your friends, do it just to maintain some form of training. But just get a little bit in just to stay physically ready and stay kind of in touch with that side of things. The opposite end of that, obviously, if that's actually your goal and you're being honest about this, you got to stay on top of training, right? You don't really have an excuse to not. Otherwise, you're not going to get to that high of a level, okay? Unless you're just genetically gifted, which there are guys like that, and there's guys that we've seen like that. But even those guys are going to run into some form of snags, whether it's getting hurt, whatever it might be, if they don't stay on top of it, okay? Moving down, step 2, what is your role, right? Are you a PO? Are you a position guy? Do you play both ways? Are you a guy who's a starter or like one of the guys shouldering most of the load offensively or on the mound? Are you just a role player? So maybe in high school, you're just kind of thrown out of the pen every so often. It's not super set in terms of your schedule. As a position guy, maybe you're playing a position when another guy is pitching or getting pinch hit opportunities, whatever it might be. Or maybe you're the guy who you're just not getting time at all, right? Or rarely getting time, okay? Maybe just like non-conference games, stuff like that. Usually, this is going to kind of separate out and be related back to this, right? Because usually the priority players are going to be the ones who, for the most part, are trying to act like this with their baseball career, trying to make it a priority and be at the highest level. There will be your guys who just want to be a successful high school player, play for fun, that are going to be that guy because they're good athletes, but not as common, right? The guys with limited opportunities, if this is your goal, you're honestly not training like it's in season, right? You're training like an off season because you probably have some ground to gain, okay? So those kind of they intertwine with each other, right? But these are going to decide like what the training looks like, how aggressive we are, what we need to take care of, what your schedule looks like, right? Kind of going down to schedule, on a segue there, how many games do you have a week, which obviously is going to be up and down, right? Especially in Wisconsin, where in April you're lucky to get games in consistently, and then in May it ends up being kind of a perfect storm of a ton of games. What days do you have practice? What time is that at? Other commitments, and then consider your role again, like I said, right? And so I'll kind of get into what a sample schedule might look like for a couple different roles, things like that. But at the end of the day, like these things matter. The other commitments is going to go back to what is your goal, right? If you're a guy who you want to play at the SEC level in college, you want to play professionally, but you're consistently making the choice not to train or train infrequently because you're busy, you want to hang out with friends, whatever it might be, you got to reevaluate if that's your actual goal because how you're acting is not lining up with your goal. Okay, so considering schedule. And then baseball-specific considerations, right? What do you need to be good at the sport, right? Obviously, you want to be able to produce a lot of force, fast, through the right range of motion, and then sequence that up in terms of movement efficiency. So those things all matter. Baseball can there's certain things that we're getting from it, right? So we're getting a lot of rotational volume, powerful rotational volume, especially hitting-wise. You're taking a lot of swings. As a pitcher, if you're a starting pitcher, you're just getting a heavy dose in one day, and then throughout the rest of the week, not as high in terms of volume or intensity. But as a position guy, you're getting a lot of volume there. Let's go back to position guy. Running-wise, you're getting a lot of running. You're getting a lot of change of direction. Not getting a ton of top speed work, okay? So we want to train the gap. So position guys, maintain that top speed. Just maintain the ability to kind of move in a general sense rotation-wise, and maybe not as powerful. So maybe we cut the volume or eliminate a lot of med ball work in season, and just kind of work on making sure that we're kind of greasing the groove and that the spine can move, the hips can move, stuff like that. Those might be a couple of examples. And then what negative consequences come from playing, right? With all that chronic, getting a lot of reps in, kind of things we just talked about. A lot of times with baseball guys, like particularly in throwers, which obviously every baseball player is a thrower, just pitching-wise, there's more heavy demand of it. Shoulder range of motion is going to shift. A lot of guys will gain layback and lose IR, which could be good or could be bad. There's kind of a certain level where it might go in either direction. Same thing hip-wise, same thing spine-wise, right? So we want to make sure we maintain all those, maintain your ability to move efficiently so that we're not having to compensate around that and either lose velocity or performance in season or adopt a pattern that might still maintain those, but we're cheating in a way to get it, and then we end up getting hurt because we've adopted a not as efficient pattern. Okay, so we want to make sure we maintain all that. Obviously, kind of vague with that, but those are all things we want to consider, right? And so getting into what a training schedule should look like, just give a couple examples. If you're a starting pitcher, that's the easiest. Like if you're a PO, starting pitcher, that's the easiest schedule to do, right? Because you're going to have one start per week usually, most places, or at least 5 days off in between. And with it, we kind of know what that build-up's going to look like, right? So if you have your heavy day in terms of number of pitches, that day or the day after, we want to kind of get a more demanding lift in with that, just to kind of compress the amount of things that we have to recover from, right? If we're kind of spreading that throughout the week, you're not going to be able to fully recover from it, right? And so the day after, usually what I like starting pitchers to do, get after a little bit of moving some heavy load in a way that's not going to tighten you up too much, okay? So maybe like a full range of motion squat, full range of motion like upper body work, so like push-ups, pull-ups, stuff like that. And then a lot of kind of trying to regain some of the movement that we might have lost from that outing or that might be sore from that outing. So those are things that we would try to get after that day. Then maybe a couple days later, we're going to get another kind of movement-focused lift. Maybe if we prioritize upper with the first one, we might prioritize lower with the next one. And then right before the start, so let's imagine, usually I tell guys train 3 or 4 times a week in season, right? Let's imagine the next time we come around or you're about to be in your next outing, get just kind of like a primer lift in, okay? Something to feel good, something to fire you up a day or two before, just to feel good going into it, and then obviously get your start and kind of repeat that cycle. Position guys, there's a lot of different ways you can take it, right? You can try to lift on game days so that your most demanding days are kind of crammed in so you can recover in between. You could just lift more frequently and in not as demanding of a fashion so that you're just kind of maintaining and slightly building. So like basically the term that's used commonly with that is microdosing, right? So you might train a little more often, but instead of an hour-long training session, you're training for 25 minutes, hitting like 4 exercises at a decently like challenging weight or challenging way to execute them, and then you're getting out, right? And maybe a little bit of mobility work in between. So position guys, I've seen guys have success training 2 or 3 times a week in like heavier, longer sessions, or training 4 or 5, 6 times a week and just going a little bit, kind of almost like spacing everything out, okay? And then those are 2 ends of the spectrum where the guys who are playing the most versus the guys who are playing the least. Try to find where you fit in the middle based on all of these things, right? And then usually as a 2-way guy, you're going to have to basically prepare like a position player because you're going to be playing every day for the most part. And then, like I said, the guys who limited opportunities, bench players, like you're not getting a whole lot of game run, treat it like the off season. Honestly, like you need to, the games are not, you don't need to be ready for the games. So you can kind of throw out the window needing to feel good for the training, right? Or from the training. You can just kind of get after it, keep attacking what you need to attack. Obviously, take into account some of the stuff that's going to come from this because you're still getting a lot more skill work in. But you still need to kind of have that off-season level commitment if you want to kind of, if you're this guy who wants to do this, you still need to have that commitment. If you're this guy who that's all you want to do, you're still going to have to make some jumps to get there, right? But it's not going to be as extreme. So just have a good, consistent training plan. have the right people in your corner helping you with skill and physical stuff, and you're going to be fine. Okay, so that's kind of a look at how to actually go about in-season training. Obviously, a lot that goes into it. If you have any specific questions about it, hit us up. We'll help you with it.